Welcome to a special bonus edition of the Andy Staples Show presented by Sling. We all just watched a crazy game. That's why they play the games game. Alabama beat Texas, but it wasn't what we thought it would be. I have here a bottle of Bijan Mustardson that I will be consuming on the show next week. Ari, that Texas team looked like it could play with just about anybody, and that was a sloppy Bama team.
Yeah, I don't know. I was telling you earlier in the week, I was starting to get feelings that game could be close because I felt like 90% of the action or something like that was on Bama, and the spread wasn't moving. And it just, as the days were going on, I just like everybody on earth thought that they were going to win by 100. And it just seemed like that was in play. Now, what I didn't think would be in play was Quinn Ewers leaving the game early in the first half. And then two, Alabama looking mortal. Now, and what I mean by mortal is, Alabama, we've become accustomed to, and part of the genius of what Nick Saban is as a coach is that he's somehow been able to get his team, for the most part, to play up to their potential, or at least 90% of their potential on a week in, week out basis. And from the beginning of that game, when they had a holding call on the kickoff return, from the first play of that game, it was flags, it was disorganized, teams being disorganized, dropped passes, heads down on the way and it just looked like they were sleepwalking the entire game.
Yeah.
Now, that takes away all credit that we give to Texas for playing really hard in that game. But at the same time, it's like that's not what we're accustomed to seeing from Alabama.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give credit to Texas's defensive line because Texas's defensive line played great. They made Alabama's offensive line look bad. And there were times when Texas wasn't even blitzing. It was just guys winning one-on-one matchups, and that is not what you're used to seeing. Now, the other thing is Bama didn't have guys getting open. Jamison Williams not walking through that. This is why Georgia wasn't that heartbroken when Jermaine Burton left. Like, they weren't thinking this was going to be a Jamison Williams situation. And Alabama is probably going to have to develop because we've been spoiled by watching how many years of Alabama having first-round receivers. And I don't know that they have one right now. Now, maybe they have a younger guy who eventually will grow into that. But that's one thing I thought was interesting as the game went on. Bryce Young, it seems like, decided who he was comfortable with late in the game and was like, okay, we're rolling here. We're not going to try to do anything too crazy. We're just going to win this game. Bryce Young looked the part of a Heisman winner in that fourth quarter. I mean, he was so cool on the touchdown drive that gave them the lead the first time. And then did it look like he ever had any doubt that they would drive for a field goal to win the game?
No, not for a second. And the thing that, what makes Alabama so good is, teams in their position who play that way lose. So for the fact that they were able to come out and win, you get back to Tuscaloosa, you regroup, you have the best player on both sides of the ball. And it's just like, listen, what happened at the end of that game, Andy? Will Anderson made a huge sack
after having a very bad game.
Yeah,
Will Anderson had a terrible game before that.
But he made that play to at least end the drive, and you thought there was a chance that they could miss the field goal as a result of that. And then, of course, Bryce Young comes up in a big way at the end and leaves that game-winning drive. And it was funny. I was watching the live odds of that game, Andy, in Alabama when that drive started was still minus 500 to win. Like the fact that they were it was just like, of course they're going to win. And I think that's also kind of, goes to show you that you can't beat Alabama playing with field goals. And that's all Texas really did. So the one thing that needs to be mentioned is that it is hilarious that Texas's kicker's last name is Auburn. Like, we have to at least talk about
how many headline writers were just heartbroken when Alabama went down. It's because Auburn beat Alabama. And then he didn't. He also struck a blow for dudes named Burt.
Yeah.
Other than the guy on Sesame Street, like, how many Burts are really doing it these days? I guess.
Well, Illinois
call
head
Brett
coach
Bielema a Burt, but
So I was like, from the beginning of that game, and you can tell everybody listening, I was texting you. I was like, "You're eating that mustard, bro. You're eating that mustard."
Oh, listen, Ari's there's some commenter, and he's being dumb, saying, "I need 30 minutes so I could look like your picks. See how stupid you were." Well, I was stupid, but Ari wasn't. Ari nailed this.
Yeah, don't get triggered in the comments. That's my role. I didn't pick this game, and if I were to pick it, I probably in the early part of the week would have nailed Alabama, and then later on in the week I kind of would have gotten nervous, which I think you saw happen real time on the pod.
Yep.
But I was just so surprised because, like, and I know I always draw back to my time covering Ohio State, and that might be annoying for you or for some listeners, but I've seen Ohio State look like that a lot. Like where they come out and they're sleepy.
Yeah, we
and
haven't
things
seen
aren't working,
Alabama look
and
like
we
that
don't
a
see
lot.
Alabama look like that ever.
2015 Ole Miss game is the only one and Ole Miss jumped all over them and held on for dear life.
Yeah,
won the game.
I don't know. It just kind of seemed like they had their heads up their butts from the beginning of that game, and it kind of looked like it was going to be I'm shocked that it was last minute drive close. And the fact of the matter is like everybody was like, oh, Ari's going to be insufferable, and I'm like, I'm actually not. Like, I'm not going to come back and be like, Texas is back, but like.
Wait, we're not doing the Alabama dynasty's over thing. We don't do that right now.
No,
we're not doing that.
No,
we're definitely not doing that
game.
I watched Alabama lose by 2 to a Florida team that wound up firing its coach last year, and Alabama still made the national title game. So
yeah, premature.
They'll figure it out now.
But what does it say for Texas though in your mind?
That's what I was going to say. Well, first of all, let's go back to Ewers, who looked great when he was on the field. Great, and that injury looks like it's going to take him away for some time. And I don't know how long that's going to be, but he was throwing deep balls. He looked confident. He was good at improvising when things got weird. He looked fantastic, and it sucks that this is the way it happened. And before we get to what this means long-term for either team, let's talk about the play in the end zone with Overshone and Bryce Young, because they screwed up the call. The roughing the passer call was awful, and they're lucky, actually, that the guy tagged the targeting on it because it allowed them to review it. And I guarantee you that referee is sitting there going, oh, crap, we really screwed this up. And then they came up with that BS excuse that he told me it was targeting, but it shouldn't have. I got it wrong. No. We know what happened. You made the wrong call, and you tried to fix it, even though you weren't supposed to be able to fix it. But I went back and looked again. Now, the ball hitting Overshone's helmet as Bryce throws it, I think, messes everything, because here's the other question. Was that an incomplete pass? Was that intentional grounding? Because intentional grounding in the end zone is a safety.
Yeah.
And how much did Alabama win by?
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah.
So
I was watching that play without the volume on because I had 3 other games that were on. So when I first saw the play, I thought it was a safety. I said I didn't know that it was what they were reviewing. Like, how do you get a targeting call or a roughing the passer call on a safety? And then I saw the replay. That was a really confusing play.
The ball hitting the defender's helmet messes it up too, because then you don't know was there a receiver in the area? He was throwing. There was a receiver out but it did take away because I was wondering, because I didn't see the ball hit the helmet at first. I was like, oh, well, that ball didn't get back to the line of scrimmage. That's a safety, but it did hit the helmet.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, was that a live ball? Was it a forward pass? And again, it was, and then it hit the helmet. So if they hadn't called the roughing the passer, which was a horrendous call because he was not down and still holding the ball when Overshorn touched him, like, it was a terrible call. But maybe they would have had a chance to try to get that call right for real.
Well, let me ask you about another thing. What did you think about Texas's decision to kick a field goal before halftime?
The way the game was going, I don't know that taking points is such a bad thing.
Yeah, and I guess maybe if he would have made that field goal, then they would have won the game. Or the game would have just gone differently. But
and it got partially blocked, I believe. So, yeah, that was one. I'm not going to kill them for that. I think they did what they needed to do. But Texas looks like a team that can compete in the Big 12. Now, here's my question about Texas, because we've seen this before where they play the really good non-conference opponent well. This is 2019 against LSU. And then they don't get up for any of their other games except Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, you get the sense, too, that this, the thing that they were talking about on the broadcast that Steve Sarkisian said earlier in the week, I thought was a really fascinating thing, and that was he wanted to field a team out there that would make Nick Saban proud. And I think that is a really interesting, dichotomy.
I think if Nick Saban wasn't so pissed at his team being so sloppy, he'd be very proud.
Yeah, but I also think, too, that just like the entire city of Austin kind of was viewing this as a Super Bowl game. And I don't know, like, what the temperament is down there. Are people devastated? Are they happy? maybe devastated in the short term, happy in the long term that they have a team that's confident enough to play with Alabama.
I don't think Texas fans are unhappy about this. I think they're looking. I mean, obviously they would have preferred to win, but they're looking at going, oh, this team could play toe to toe with Alabama. It's not that far off, because that's the thing up front. And remember, they're playing some young offensive linemen. That was the question. They looked the part.
Absolutely. And athletically too. I mean, Xavier Worthy is incredible. Everybody knew that. Bijan Robinson is a potential Hall of Fame NFL player in the making. I mean, that guy runs with so much power. I mean, they've got the offensive line.
I'm just hoping Bijan Robinson is a good mustard maker. That's all I care about right now.
We're going to have a lot of fun with that. But the thing that I want to talk about, because we just brushed over it and we're 10 minutes into this thing, is how crappy it is that Quinn Ewers is out. Like that
sucks.
That was like the whole point we made the bet. And also too, like, he looked so freaking good in the first 2 drives.
Yeah.
I mean, he
looked
really
natural out there. The moment wasn't too big for him. Yeah. And I don't know what the injury is. Joe Klatt, who has suffered a few of those, was saying, that's where you get your broken collarbone or a messed up AC joint. Those are injuries. Some of those are injuries that maybe you can come back during a season, but it's not really easy. So, I don't know when we're going to see him again. I thought Hudson Card played really well, despite the fact that he was, on a bum ankle most of the time.
Yeah, and then hopefully, too, it kind of made it seem like that faux quarterback competition was a real one, because everybody just assumed that Quinn Ewers was going to win. I did anyway. I don't know if everybody's, but, he can play. I mean, he was a starter, in the past there, so wasn't like some random person coming off the bench just playing, grabbing for dear life. I look at Texas as a team now that, theoretically, if they are as good as they looked, and they can actually get up and not lose to Kansas State or Oklahoma State or any of the other big.
I mean, they play UTSA next week, Ari. That's one of the, UTSA is a very well coached team. Jeff Traylor does a good job. They played a heartbreaking loss to Houston last week. Like, they're going to come in because this will be their season if they can beat Texas. So they've got that, and then Texas has to go to Lubbock, and we'll see with Texas Tech. They've got Houston today, and they also have to play NC State. So we're going to have a much better idea what Texas Tech is. Texas is going to have to get back up for those. So
Texas needs to get up every week.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Texas isn't – I mean, they're at a point now where, and I don't want to start talking about big picture about what they're – but if they are as good as they made – if you want to give them credit and say they made Alabama look the way that they did, Alabama wasn't sleepwalking. Their defensive line was awesome. Their skill position players were awesome.
Alabama was sloppy.
But offensive line is ahead of schedule. You could make the case that Texas could win every game that's left on their schedule.
Oh, if they play the way they did on Saturday, they will be competitive in every single game.
And the College Football Playoff Committee will look at this game as a win.
Correct.
They will. This is a loss, but they will look at it as especially if Alabama continues to ascend.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If their only blemish on their resume is a one loss, they'll treat that like beating the top. Do you think that losing to Alabama by 1 in September is the same thing as beating a top 15 team in the eyes of the committee?
I don't think it's the same, but
it might as well be.
Blowout losses are what really gets you with the committee. If you lose a game that you're kind of supposed to lose and you fought, but then you did everything else right, I think they're okay with those.
I think that they respect close losses to teams like Alabama.
Yeah. No, and here's the thing. If Texas is to get where they want to go, they're going to have to beat Oklahoma. They're going to beat Kansas State. They're going to have to beat Baylor. They're going to have to beat Oklahoma State. They're going to have to win some games against some really good teams. So, no, this would not keep them from making the playoff. Now, would you feel differently, say, if Alabama had to play Georgia next week? Would you be feeling a little bit differently about how that goes?
I would be concerned about Alabama's lack of talent not lack of talent, lack of proven playmaking
talent. Yeah.
At wide receiver. So that, I mean, Alabama couldn't move the football for 4 quarters until the end of the game. So, Alabama's supposed to be scoring in the upper 30s every game, even against good teams, and they kind of were anemic for 2 full quarters. And I don't know what you think that is. There was no reliable.
I mean, did it not look like post Jamison Williams injury in the national championship game?
It did. Alabama,
that was Bryce Young trying to make everything happen against the best defense in the country, and it was really hard to do.
Yeah,
So
it's like too. It's like, do you look at that as like another Heisman moment for Bryce Young?
yes, yeah. I mean, he looked the part at the end of that game because a different quarterback. There are very few quarterbacks that I would want with the ball in those situations. I had no questions about what Bryce Young was going to do. Like, there was
Has he
no
been
doubt
in a
in my mind.
situation like that in his career at Alabama that hasn't gone his way?
I mean, the Georgia game last year, the national championship game.
Yeah, but was there a time where they had the ball down one possession that he didn't? I can't remember that
The
game
end
off
of the
top my
national
head.
championship game.
Oh,
He threw an
okay.
interception to Keely
Okay,
Ringo.
so I guess it didn't go his way.
Yeah.
But he's been pretty clutch. I was out with my friends having beverages that night, so I don't remember that game play for play. So excuse me. But
it was a very famous play in last season.
Yeah. No, I just couldn't remember the score because like I thought that for whatever reason. What was the final score of that game? Do you remember off the top of your head?
I think Georgia by 2 scores.
Yeah, I thought that play happened when they were down 2 scores.
No. They were down 1 score. It put them down 2 scores.
Oh yeah, the picks. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
I remember. It's all coming back to me now. I should have taken Z-Biotic.
There you go. Look at that. Shouting out the sponsors even when you don't have to. I love it.
So yeah, I'm not frantically yelling around the room. Texas is back. I don't think that's the case. I'd be proud if I were a Texas fan. I think the takeaway here is that it sucks that Quinn Ewers is out because this was supposed to be a year where through downs and ups that they built around him and felt really good about where they were coming into the season next year. Alabama also isn't invisible. I think that's invincible. Did I do that again?
Invisible Alabama might be invincible. Can you imagine? Where would you
invisible
just be a football
Alabama
walking around like you have to go find it?
Nucleus and invincible are my words. But
let's all right, let's talk about the important things. So I'm eating this Bijan Mustardson. Our double or nothing Pitt Tennessee bet doesn't matter at this point. It's all me. I got to figure out how I'm going to do this. I've been told try to shoot it. Some people are saying no, dip some pretzels in it, put it on a brat, do it like that, and just enjoy it. I'm going to try to drink it, I think. But I will probably have some backup material ready.
I feel like eating all the pretzels and stuff would just be detrimental to your calorie counting. If I were you, I would just shoot it.
Well, it would definitely be detrimental to my calorie counting, but I can work out a little more, or I can eat a little less the day before or the day after.
Do you know what I was going to do if it were me? I was just going to take the cap off so that it was just the fat part of the thing with no little hole. And I was just going to squirt it down my throat.
That's what I'm thinking, at least at first. We see how that goes.
Yeah, you take one gulp of it, and if it's unmanageable, then you can change your. But I think that you'll be able. The John Mustard's delicious.
I don't see myself chugging it like that guy on the Man Show, but
I mean, it's not that much if you actually chugged it.
It's 9 ounces. The beauty of 0 calories on this sucker. I don't know if
you're good. 0 calories.
Focus on that thing. Yeah, 0 calories. There we go.
But might make your stomach a little queasy though.
Well, that's the thing. I might not eat anything else afterwards, so it might be a very low calorie day for your boy.
Yeah.
So that's all right. Ari, this was a whole lot of fun.
It was.
There's 2 more windows of games. I'm going to see Anthony Richardson versus Will Levis in the Swamp. Let's go.
Enjoy that game. I'm going to be watching.
I'm off to the Swamp. I'm about to get rained on a lot. Thanks for watching. The podcast will be live tonight. It's probably second half-ish of the Baylor BYU game. Early in the Mississippi State Arizona game is when we're probably going to get rolling. It'll be me and Nicole Auerbach. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to talk about all these games today. Nicole, who has tried Bijan Mustardson, will probably give me some advice on how to consume it. And listen,
here's the next step, man.
Enjoy the rest of the games. If they're anything like that first one, whoo, we're in for a good day.